Good morning, everybody, and happy Halloween. You are seeing my colleague Jerry Murphy's fine art in making a soccer ball jack-o'-lantern. Jerry, very good job with that. It's pretty cool looking.
Yeah, I'm afraid to say it. Well, my at the request of my grandson, who's a big soccer guy. I mean, we didn't play soccer when I was a kid until like college, but now it's like that's the game that everybody plays now. So I was happy to make a stab at it.
You are a great grandpa. Well, with that, we're just going to kick off and get started. Today, we're going to be uh, talking about the anatomy of a war game. We recommend to our financial services firms that they conduct war games, or as they prefer to be known, tabletop exercises on a regular basis, minimally, and this is minimally once a quarter. But what should those war games include, Jerry?
Well, from our perspective, there's really two different kinds of war games you want to do. One is really technical, and what are you specifically doing with the systems themselves, and what are the individual operators doing? And then you also, uh, just as important, is what do executives do whenever you have an issue? It's not just what's going on internally. It's what are we thinking about from a policy perspective? What's our messaging to the world? And those types of issues are just as important as what you're specifically doing with your networks and servers and stuff like that.
So you're basically saying there's a technical version, which is your cybersecurity folks, your incident response team, your operations, NetOps, SecOps, et cetera. And then there's also an executive version of a war game with your chief risk officer, your chief compliance officer, your chief legal officer, your CFO, maybe head of HR, head of corporate communications, and things like that. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly, exactly. And when you're thinking about on the technical side, I mean, especially if you're doing a security operation, it's not just your security people, because there clearly are other people that get involved when you have a security incident. There are networking people that you need to think about, your server people, database people. I mean, there's a lot of people that are involved with the systems. That it's not just your security operations center and your CISO. It's all of the people that are associated with that on the technical side. And on the executive side, yeah, you need to think about not just your chief risk officer and your chief financial officer. You may want to have your CEO there, but you certainly need to think about the personnel issues. You need to think about uh, how you're speaking to the press, how you're speaking to law enforcement, even, right? I mean, there's a lot of people involved executively, but that certainly is a list of the people that you mentioned.
Well, so these are pretty important people. And why are we recommending that we consume days of their time doing a tabletop exercise?
Well, the first, I mean, you could say because it's important and it's important to your business, important to your people. Uh, the short answer is the SEC mandates it. There's actually a clarification because of all of these big violations we've had that have been very public. The SEC has made some clarifications that they're basically saying anything uh, that happens that's reportable, you have to do these things, and basically they're giving people until the 15th of December, and starting then, it's mandatory that you do these things.
And that
So
you report any material breach on your 8K
exactly,
forms. So
exactly.
I would also say, quite frankly, from what we've done, you and I, Jerry, having the CEO realize some of the logistical challenges, and I say the CEO, but senior executives,
Yeah,
tends to open their eyes to what some of the problems might be and makes it a little bit easier to make the changes organizationally or change budget or whatever that's necessary. And the flip side of that is people tend to get completely stressed out when they're involved in a wargaming or tabletop exercise when senior executives are there, which is good because in the real world, you're going to be very stressed out. So you might as well learn how to operate under that enormous stress of having the bosses looking over your shoulder.
exactly. A lot of companies have been very used to making this an annual roll your eyes. Oh, do we have to do this? Just
Yep.
like you were asking me, eat
December
your
is tabletop
broccoli.
that month.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's like, yeah. It's like you do it at the end of the year when most of the people aren't there. Maybe your clients aren't going to notice because everybody's on vacation. That's like, okay, let's do all these things we need to do. Let's shut the server down, start a server. Let's do this thing, and it becomes this I have to do it, check the block thing. Oh, do I have the phone number for the right person and all that? But what we realize, when people have actual incidents, almost never is what happens what you practiced. And one of the reasons you practice is not just so I know who to call, that you get used to working with people that you don't normally work with on a daily basis. Now, usually, security networking people may work together, but they're not necessarily talking to, say, the database administrators. Or when you're doing a war game for a security incident, how many of those people are actually thinking about, when do I call law enforcement? Who do I call? When's the last time I updated that person's telephone number or their name? And people, when they start walking through that, they realize, wow, I didn't even think about that. I don't know who that person is. And so the fact that you can get used to knowing who to call, when to call, it just breeds familiarity, so that when things happen, you know who to talk to. You're familiar with people, and they are familiar with you. And the more that we can feel like we're all in this boat together, it's far more likely that we're going to work together, as opposed to have the tendency to avoid talking to somebody, or even worse, like throw somebody else under the bus without doing anything productive.
Well, and I would also stress, in fact, I was just talking the other day to a CISO who said, I have an excellent team. We war game 6 times a year and we're getting better at it. But one of the challenges he faces is that there's always a couple of open recs. He's never been fully staffed. And so in an environment where, who is supposed to call? Well, maybe that person just left 3 months ago and now who's taken their place? And did you know that they had that responsibility? That's another reason, is to keep these processes living things. So, but coming back to the senior executives, I think this is the one where we get the most pushback. Why should we take senior executives through this? I think you've made a very clear reasoning, which is, number one, it's mandated by the SEC for many organizations, and number two, it's very important for them to see what's going on. In your experience, what happens after they go through the first tabletop exercise? Is it something that they figure it's once and done, or does that launch a regular cadence of these for senior execs?
It's both. I mean, every time we've done these exercises, 100% of the time, people will realize, oh my God, there's enormous value to this. They realize it's one of those, Donald Rumsfeld moments, where it's like there's the known unknowns and the unknown unknowns. So people like, I didn't even think about that issue. So it becomes a very much an aha moment, both that there's so much more complexity here than I was really thinking about, and also the value of developing the teamwork and realizing that the more I push these things, the more comfortable I am talking with people, the more comfortable I am dealing with uncertainty, and the more comfortable I am relying on other people in the environment. So people realize the massive value in doing this, the massive need for doing it are both realized. And then it's an issue of how important it is, and then how compelling it is, and do you have the senior management? Because the more
Right.
that you have senior people there, if it's the CEO says we need to do this, then everybody underneath that tends to fall in line. If the
Well,
person
and I guess, kind of wrapping up, I know you had said earlier when we were talking about this that once the senior executives start, in our experience, they eagerly continue.
Absolutely, and
Absolutely.
the more senior they are, the more likely it is to continue. That would be the one thing I say, because if the person is more junior, they're going to realize importance. But if they then go to management who hadn't experienced it, they're going to say, we got something else that's a priority. The higher up you get the executives, the more you're likely to make it a priority, and having all of the financial people, project management people, business units coming in line with doing it.
Excellent. Well, that's it until next week, folks. Thank you very much for watching. Please click on the button. You can register for the entire series online. We come every Tuesday right before the markets open at 9 o'clock. So tune in next week at 0900 for the next episode of FinServ Tech Oracles, right before the markets open. Thank you for
We'll
watching.
scare up something great next time.
Okay. Goodbye.